You think danger comes from arguments, from temptation, from things going wrong. You think collapse announces itself with noise. But the moment that actually threatens everything in your life is quieter than that. One day feels normal. The house works. The routine holds. You believe stability means safety. And while you're standing there thinking nothing is wrong, something lands on her without touching you at all. A look in the mirror she can't laugh off. A number that suddenly feels heavier than it should. A comparison she didn't ask for, but can't unsee. From your side, nothing happened. From hers, something irreversible just clicked into place. And this is where men get blindsided. Because you didn't fail. You didn't neglect her. You didn't betray anything. Time did. It whispered a truth she can't unhear. Youth isn't paused. It isn't waiting. And it isn't coming back. This isn't about cheating. It isn't rebellion. It isn't dissatisfaction with you or the life you built. It's finality. The realization that certain doors have already closed. That some versions of herself are now unreachable, no matter how stable or successful everything looks. Nothing happened, but everything changed. And here's the part that should make your chest tighten when a woman realizes time has become an enemy. Standing still starts to feel like suffocation. Patience turns into urgency. Calm turns into restlessness. And behavior that looks irrational from the outside feels necessary on the inside. The most dangerous moment in a woman's life isn't heartbreak, because heartbreak still believes in recovery. It's the moment she understands there is no rewind. And once that truth settles in, the choices that follow won't be about logic, loyalty, or gratitude. They'll be about escape. Men are never taught this difference, and because of that, they misinterpret everything that follows. Men experience time as pressure. The older you get, the heavier responsibility becomes, but also the clearer your value feels. Skills compound. Status stabilizes. Authority grows. Aging sharpens your usefulness. Time pushes you forward. Women experience time differently, not as pressure, but as reflection. Every year doesn't just add weight, it holds up a mirror. And that mirror doesn't measure what she's built. It measures what she's losing. Her value system was constructed early and reinforced constantly. Visibility, attention, reaction, being noticed without effort. Youth wasn't just beauty, it was leverage. It shaped how the world responded to her, how doors opened, how conversations flowed, how mistakes were forgiven. It wasn't vanity, it was currency. And when that currency begins to depreciate, the loss isn't abstract, it's felt in real time. Fewer looks linger. Compliments change tone. Relevance becomes conditional instead of assumed. And no amount of stability at home offsets what the external world quietly withdraws. This is why men get confused. You think security should calm fear. You think loyalty should stabilize identity. But identity built on visibility doesn't respond to reassurance, it responds to confirmation. When the confirmation fades, panic doesn't mean ingratitude. It means disorientation. She isn't comparing herself to other women to be cruel or dramatic. She's checking whether she still exists in the same way she once did. And every comparison tightens the clock. Here's the key insight men miss because it's uncomfortable to accept men feel time as pressure. Women feel time as loss. Pressure motivates. Loss destabilizes. Pressure asks, "What's next?" Loss asks, "What's gone forever?" And once that question takes hold, behavior shifts. Not toward logic, toward urgency. Toward anything that feels like proof the loss isn't complete. This is where judgment fails and understanding matters. When the currency that built your identity starts depreciating, panic is rational. Not noble, not harmless, but rational. You don't calmly adapt when the thing that made you legible to the world begins to fade. You scramble. You test. You reach. You look for confirmation that you still have leverage left to spend. And if you don't understand this mechanism, you'll misread every move she makes afterward as disrespect or betrayal, when in reality, it's fear responding to time finally collecting its debt. Before any action, before any visible change, everything happens internally. This is the phase men never see because nothing is aimed at them yet. The panic doesn't announce itself as dissatisfaction. It shows up as awareness. Sudden, relentless awareness. She becomes hyper-conscious of time in her body's skin. Energy, recovery, reflection. Things she once ignored now register constantly. Not obsessively, but persistently. Like background noise that never shuts off. Every small signal feels louder because it confirms the same message: time is no longer neutral. Comparison spikes next, and it isn't shallow the way men assume. It's involuntary. Younger women move through the world with an ease she remembers, but can't reclaim. Attention flows toward them without negotiation. Opportunities feel open-ended for them in a way that now feels conditional for her. She doesn't hate them. She measures herself against them to locate where she stands. And the answer keeps shifting in the wrong direction. That's when identity anxiety takes hold, not about looks alone, but about relevance. About whether she still registers in the same way she once did. This is where urgency enters without direction. There's no plan yet, no rebellion, no decision, just a tightening sense that time is running faster than her ability to respond to it. She feels late to something but doesn't know what. Restlessness grows without an object. Calm becomes uncomfortable. Stillness feels like waste. And none of this looks dangerous from the outside because it hasn't attached itself to behavior yet. Here's the line men need to hear. Without dismissing it, she isn't afraid of getting older. She's afraid of becoming irrelevant, of fading without ceremony, of realizing that the world's response to her is changing permanently, regardless of how well her life turned out. That fear doesn't come with demands or complaints. It comes with silence, with internal recalibration, with observation instead of expression. Men miss this phase because there's no conflict yet, no pressure placed on the relationship, no visible rebellion to react to. She still shows up, still functions, still participates, but the center of gravity has shifted inward. She's no longer oriented toward building forward. She's oriented toward assessing loss. And because nothing is being asked of you, you assume nothing is wrong. This is the most deceptive stage of all. The panic is real, but it's contained. And containment looks like stability until it doesn't. Because once urgency exists without direction, it will eventually find one. And by the time it does, men are already behind the curve, reacting to behavior without having seen the fear that produced it. Urgency changes how the mind evaluates risk. When time feels abundant, caution has value. Waiting makes sense. Restraint feels intelligent, but when time begins to feel scarce, decision-making compresses. Long-term consequences fade. The future stops feeling expansive and starts feeling fragile. And in that mental state, behavior shifts in ways that look irrational from the outside, but feel logical from the inside. This is where out-of-character behavior appears not because character disappeared, but because the rules governing it have changed. Sudden lifestyle changes are often the first signal. New routines, new aesthetics, new priorities. Not gradual evolution, but sharp pivots. These shifts aren't about self-expression, they're about sensation. Movement becomes proof of existence. Emotional risk-taking follows naturally. Conversations deepen faster than they should. Vulnerability accelerates. Boundaries soften. Not because she intends harm, but because restraint feels wasteful when the clock feels loud. The future no longer feels like something to protect. It feels like something to outrun. Boundary-blurring interactions are rarely planned. They begin as moments that feel harmless because they feel alive. A look held too long. A conversation that crosses into charged territory. A connection that bypasses history and responsibility. These moments aren't pursued for betrayal. They're pursued for contrast, for the reminder that she can still provoke response without explanation or effort. And once that response is felt, the nervous system learns quickly. To justify these shifts, personal rules get rewritten. Standards that once felt immovable suddenly seem arbitrary. Values get reframed as limitations imposed by an earlier version of herself. This isn't hypocrisy, it's adaptation under perceived threat. When identity feels endangered, consistency becomes less important than relief. When time feels limited, restraint feels pointless. Men misread this phase because they assume risk equals dissatisfaction. It doesn't. It equals urgency. The fear here isn't of losing someone, it's of losing relevance, of reaching a point where choice disappears. And urgency doesn't ask permission. It overrides caution, because caution belongs to a future that no longer feels guaranteed. This is why reasoning fails in this phase. Logic can't compete with panic calibrated to time. By the time behavior shifts, the decision-making framework has already changed. And if you don't understand that urgency is the driver, you'll misinterpret reaction as intention when in reality, it's fear trying to move faster than the clock. This is where language becomes camouflage. Finding herself sounds noble, reflective, almost spiritual. It gives urgency a clean narrative and wraps panic in purpose. But stripped of romance, what it often means is escape from finality, an attempt to step outside the version of life that suddenly feels permanent. Reinvention becomes the story told to justify motion. When standing still feels unbearable, and the culture reinforces it, praising disruption as courage without asking what's actually driving it. Here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. Reinvention isn't growth when it's fueled by panic. Growth is slow. It tolerates boredom. It builds depth over time. Panic is urgent. It demands immediate sensation. It trades coherence for intensity. And urgency breaks things because it doesn't negotiate with consequences, it outruns them. When someone is trying to outrun time, consistency feels like surrender. The past feels like a trap. The future feels like a closing door. So the present gets exploited for relief. This is why finding herself often looks chaotic. Values shift overnight. Boundaries loosen without warning. Responsibilities feel negotiable. The self being found is usually the one that existed before permanence set in, before roles solidified, before choices narrowed. That's not self-discovery. That's regression dressed up as liberation. And pointing that out isn't an attack, it's accuracy. Men misread this phase because the language sounds healthy. Who wouldn't support self-exploration? Who wouldn't respect someone wanting to evolve? But evolution doesn't require urgency. It doesn't erase accountability. It doesn't discard what was built in a rush to feel alive again. When panic is the fuel, reinvention doesn't expand life, it destabilizes it. This matters because if you mistake panic for growth, you'll cooperate with behavior that's actively dissolving structure. You'll rationalize shifts that have no direction beyond relief. You'll confuse motion with progress. And by the time the damage becomes visible, the narrative will already be set. This wasn't destruction, it was self-discovery. Understanding the difference protects you from participating in a story that sounds enlightened but is driven by fear. Growth integrates the past. Panic tries to erase it. And only one of those leads somewhere sustainable. This is where men personalize what was never about them. When behavior shifts, the instinct is to search for a cause that fits the pain. You assume attraction has changed, that you've become less desirable, less exciting, less chosen, or you assume dissatisfaction that something you failed to provide finally surfaced. And when neither explanation fully explains the urgency, the mind reaches for the most familiar enemy, another man, a rival you can point to, a story that restores order to the chaos. Because if it's about attraction, dissatisfaction, or competition, at least it's concrete. At least it makes sense. But that story is usually wrong, and believing it makes everything worse, because it turns a time-driven identity crisis into a referendum on your worth. Here's the reality: most men never hear clearly enough. It's not about you losing value. It's about her losing certainty. Certainty in who she is. Certainty in what the future holds. Certainty that the choices she made still feel open rather than closing. When certainty disappears, behavior looks chaotic because it's being driven by fear, not desire. This is why reassurance doesn't work. You try to prove you're still attractive, still committed, still solid, but you're answering a question she isn't asking. You think she's evaluating you. She's evaluating time. And time doesn't respond to loyalty or logic. When fear is about finality, no amount of being enough calms it. Men misread this because they experience threat externally. Rivals, loss of status, direct challenges. Women often experience threat internally through reflection, comparison, and the slow realization that options are narrowing. That kind of threat doesn't need a villain. It only needs awareness. And once awareness locks in, behavior shifts in search of relief. Here's the line that should ground you instead of humiliating you. You didn't cause the clock to start ticking. You didn't age her. You didn't create the biological or cultural framework that tied her identity to youth, and you can't reverse the moment she became aware of it. Personalizing that process doesn't give you control, it just drains your stability. Understanding this doesn't excuse harm, but it keeps you from collapsing inward, chasing explanations that turn you into the problem, because once you stop making it about your value, you regain clarity. And clarity is the only position from which you can respond without losing yourself. What men must learn to see here isn't hidden intention, it's altered psychology. Panic doesn't just change behavior, it changes personality. When time becomes the threat, thinking compresses. Decisions that once passed through caution now skip straight to relief. Risk tolerance increases because risk feels preferable to stagnation. Long-term consequences fade, not out of ignorance, but because the future itself feels unstable. When someone is operating under time panic, they're not asking, "Is this wise?" They're asking, "Does this make me feel alive right now?" And that question produces very different outcomes. The second awareness is one men resist because it attacks their strongest instinct fixing. You cannot verify someone else's identity crisis. You can't reassure fear away. You can't stabilize urgency with consistency. You can't love time backward. When panic is rooted in aging, reassurance sounds hollow. Stability feels like confirmation of the very thing she's trying to escape. And love, no matter how genuine, doesn't reverse the clock. Trying harder in this phase doesn't calm the situation. It signals that you're negotiating with something that doesn't negotiate. And every attempt to ground her emotionally risks pulling you off center instead. This is why explanations become noise. Words multiply during panic because words protect the ego. They justify, soften, and reframe behavior so it feels intentional rather than reactive. You'll hear narratives about growth, freedom, clarity, self-discovery. None of those words tell you where things are actually going. Actions do. Behavior reveals trajectory long before outcomes arrive. You watch for impulsivity replacing consistency, for justification replacing accountability, for emotional highs replacing depth and presence. When short bursts of feeling become more important than sustained connection, something fundamental has shifted. This isn't about becoming suspicious or hypervigilant. It's about staying oriented to reality. You don't debate explanations or chase reassurance. You observe patterns over time. Panic always leaves a trail. It speeds things up. It loosens structure. It prioritizes sensation over substance. And when you can see that clearly, you stop being pulled into reaction. Words will always sound reasonable when fear is doing the talking. Actions won't. Actions reveal trajectory. And once you're watching the direction instead of the story, you regain the one thing panic can't touch: your footing. At the end of all this, the truth doesn't arrive with drama. It settles in quietly, heavy but stabilizing. Some women face the reality of time and adapt with maturity. They integrate what's changing without burning down what still has value. Others don't. Others try to outrun it. They mistake urgency for courage and motion for meaning. And in that sprint away from aging, they create damage they never intended. Because panic doesn't aim, it reacts. This is where men need to stop fighting the wrong battle. You were never meant to compete with someone else's fear of aging. You weren't designed to outwork time, outlove biology, or prove your worth against a clock that doesn't negotiate. The moment you try to do that, you put yourself in a losing position. Because time doesn't respond to effort, reassurance, or sacrifice. It only moves forward. And anyone trying to reverse it will pull everything around them into chaos. Your responsibility isn't to rescue someone from time. It isn't to absorb panic and call it loyalty. It isn't to erase yourself slowly just to keep someone calm. That path doesn't save relationships, it destroys men. The only responsibility you actually have is harder and quieter to recognize when panic is driving behavior, and to refuse to destroy your life, trying to prove you're enough to stop it. Because no amount of being enough can silence someone else's fear of finality. This isn't about becoming cold or detached. It's about staying grounded when someone else loses their footing. You don't chase reassurance. You don't argue with explanations. You don't internalize a crisis that isn't yours. You observe. You stay intact. You let reality reveal itself over time instead of collapsing under the pressure to fix what can't be fixed. That's the calm most men never discover until it's too late. The understanding that you can care deeply without self-erasing and stand firm without cruelty. When you stop trying to outrun time on someone else's behalf, you regain your center. And from there, no matter what happens next, you don't lose yourself in the process. If this feels disturbingly familiar, you're not alone. Subscribe. We talk about the truths men only understand after the damage is done.